Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to start off the new theme, which I know we usually do that on Monday. It's Tuesday, but whatever, just roll with it. This week's theme is more representation. I know on this channel we tend to listen to a lot of metal written by and played by white dudes, which is perfectly fine. I like metal. I like white dudes. I'm a white dude. I like myself. But it's always nice to get outside of that sometimes and explore some other sounds and cultures. And that's what we're doing this week. We might have some metal, it's just not made by white dudes. We might not have metal. Just trying to find some more music to listen to. And that's what's going to kick us off today. I don't actually know how to pronounce this group or this song. I'm going to have Google Translate jump in and help me out here. The band name is
万能青年旅店
and the track is
河北墨麒麟
Now the band name translates to Universal Youth Hostel, but the track doesn't seem to translate into anything that I could make sense of. But let's dive into it. Let's see what they're bringing to the table today. Oh, okay, we got an interesting rhythm. So 20 beats. So I bet we're in 5/4 then. That would make sense because we do have the second accent coming in on beat 5. And then it's on the and of 9 or something like that, which is close to 10. Very funky though. Very playful rhythmically. Yeah, 5/4 makes sense. The last two bars are very interesting in their phrasing. I think we have a grouping of 4 and a grouping of 6 rather than 5 and 5, but yeah, it just kind of keeps you on your feet the whole time. Okay. A little bit of dissonance here. I can roll with this.
嘴唇停止吟唱，暮色与想念，它此刻沉痛而危险。
Okay. Very gentle and light. I like the vocal harmonies. The guitar harmonies are nice too. Very different from the dissonance we just got done introducing to the track. something that I kept in my mind but kind of forgot to mention is that we've hit a 4/4 a while ago. I'm pretty sure it was when we started the vocal section. I'm sorry, what? I have no idea what was going on in that last section. Yeah. That drumming is super funky. The brass adds a really nice brightness to this. Dude, that descending line, sometimes we descended 4 notes, sometimes we descended 6 notes, sometimes we descended 8 notes. Just consistently modulating phrasing on that. The drummer just kills it every time. Oh, the strings are a nice addition. Oh, yes! The beautiful call and response building out into this layered melody writing. So good. The little pluckiness over here. Yeah. So we have all 4 families of instrument. We have woodwinds, brass, string, and percussion. Very interesting texture here. "26-beat phrase where I feel like every bar has a different number of beats. This is just, it flows so well. bit bluesy in here, what? The guitar over here doing the counterpoint. Uh, that that was something. I okay. I don't even know where to begin with this. I was like, maybe I should just start at the beginning of the song. No, I don't think that's a great place to begin discussion of it. I thought maybe I'd just start with the musicianship of it. Yeah, I mean, but like that's obvious, right? Everybody kind of heard how talented this group was. Like, I don't know. This is almost one of those songs where there's a real strong part of me that's like, anything you say is just not going to be very effective at describing what you heard. It's just better to say, y'all heard that, I'll see you next time, and end the video. That's not what we do here, though. But it is, I mean, it's art. This is really good art. It's really difficult to describe what makes it good. But I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to see if I can pull any of this together into any sort of thread that makes it make sense in any way other than outside of just the feeling it. I think it's really difficult not to have felt something while listening to this. It was exceptional. It really was. There's no good place to start though, so I'm going to start at the beginning. I was a little weary about it. It starts off very noisy. I don't really know what I'm listening to. We're in a very odd time signature, or at least it seemed like that at first. Ended up just being 5/4, 4 bars of 5/4. very standard stuff. But the thing is that they're not happy with any sort of symmetrical phrasing. We'll actually see this all throughout the song. I don't want to touch on it too much yet, but the beginning ends up feeling a little bit difficult to follow because of it. But I generally like the groove of what's going on. I like the layering of the instruments. I like some of the techniques being utilized within the instruments. And then we become dissonant and we start introducing these really tense dyads, weren't they? Both of the guitars playing single notes each? I think that's what was going on there. This was 12 minutes ago, man. Give me a little bit of a break here. We just listened to a lot of music I'm trying to remember. I think it was two guitars, though, playing dyads and just very tense note intervals there. And I was like, okay, so they're kind of wonky rhythmically. They find a groove within it, but it's still a little obtuse. And now they're going to be a bit obtuse harmonically as well. And I haven't really heard anything strong melodically either. We have these reoccurring riffs going on. And I got really worried. I was like, I think this is going to be one of those tracks. This is really going to push my enjoyment of more experimental progressive music. And I'm not really going to enjoy it by the end, but I'll be enthralled by the musicianship on display. One of those things. Enjoying the artisticness elements of it, but not so much a casual side. And then all of that went away. We entered into a pretty standard 4/4. We introduced pretty standard concepts of rhythm and groove and harmony. We had some beautiful melodies show up with the vocals. The vocals also brought harmonies on the melodies. And it was generally a very palatable thing. We brought all the energy down as well. It's very it's greatly simplified what was going on. We dabbled a little bit, moving back into the more chaotic phrasing and timing, but we came back to the verse, I guess we can call it, the 4/4 vocal bit. I was like, okay, so we're just going to be bouncing back and forth between these two. I got a pretty good gist of what's going on, but there's still like 9 minutes of music ahead of us. So they've shown me something that I wasn't too keen on and something that I quite enjoyed. So let's see how they progress with this. And I believe it was around this point, getting towards the 3 or 4 minute mark, that we moved away from this dichotomy of less palatable and more palatable into a slow burn build-up. And this was pretty much the rest of the track. The last, I don't know, I'd say like 6 minutes of it. We began to introduce more instrumentation. We had brass come in, we had strings come in, we had some woodwinds come in, and we had a couple of solo sections on this new foundation. These solo sections led the way for new melodies, new harmonies, and new rhythms, and we continued to build up the intensity of the song with the drummer getting more intense with their polyrhythms, with the solos becoming louder. Whether the solo is an instrument or the vocals. I'm counting some of the vocal parts as solos. It's kind of an awkward way to word that. Most people just say, oh, this is when the vocals come back in. But they did have linear-ish melodies to them, and they were the solo lead instrument as far as melody was concerned. So despite the fact they had words, I'm grouping them in there. But the solos became more intense, louder, more dynamic, more movement to them, more complex. All of this builds up to the peak of the song, which I suppose was about 9.5 or 10 minutes into the track, in which case it began to remove layers. This peak, I thought, though, was rather affecting. Something about it, I think it's just the raw intensity of it, the harmonic balance between consonant and dissonant sounds, the rhythm of the band trying to keep a general pulse going while the drummer is in every single polyrhythm available. I don't know, that drummer was just bonkers. We have melodies, we have counter melodies, we have solos with secondary solos played underneath them, we have wailing vocals, some belts in there. It just gets very claustrophobic. Musically, they're filling up every bit of space that they have, but even compositionally, it feels like the walls are caving in. There's so much going on, and pretty much all of it is fighting for the spotlight. It's all loud, it's all direct, it's all presented in your face, it's all immediate, it's intense. Everything wants my attention. And it starts to feel like I can't give all of it the amount that it wants. We do reach a peak, though, and things start to get stripped away until we have just the string outro of that core motif that we had been listening to for the past 2 minutes or so. And then that eventually fades out as well. That's generally the gist of the song. Balance of balance of palatability and progressiveness, creating a sort of a instrumental versus verse kind of thing, a couple of solo sections, and then the build-up of intensity to the slow burn that takes us to the end of the track. From that perspective, it's not too different from a lot of progressive songs. We don't necessarily have what I think could be a stereotypical chorus here, but we do have a bouncing back and forth between an A and a B section at the beginning of the song. That takes us to a bridge. This one's kind of extended. This bridge acts as both a solo section and a slow burn, which a lot of modern progressive rock bands will use their bridge as a slow burn. It takes us to the peak, which is also the outro. We have an A, B, A, B, C thing going on. Now, the C can easily be broken up into other sections, and probably I would do that and say that we reach a point of linearity at that portion of the song. But I think it's easy to see here where this track isn't wild in its structure. It's actually built off of a pretty standard structural idea, and they just expanded from there. And I think that's pretty awesome too. Again, it starts the song off with a little bit of, at least for me, my experience with it was a little bit of unsureness. I'm not really digging this, but where are we going? They show us the other side of the spectrum, and now you're like, okay, I've seen the two odds. Where do they meet? Where are they going to explore in the middle of the spectrum? And I really like that type of writing, to show the audience what you can expect, and then to build off of that, and then explore it. I don't know if this is who they are as a band. Maybe this is a one-time deal, and everything else is stereotypical pop. I don't know. It probably isn't, but I've never heard anything else by them. But if the rest of their music is similar to this, I think this is a fantastic introduction to them. Not just because it showcases a lot of their skills independently and their compositional chops, but because it does show a wide spectrum of ideas that are put together in a rather coherent and fluid manner. It does a really good job of being an isolated track. And I think that, this isn't really a group I think would have a single. But I kind of think this would be a really good one. Now, musicianship. Phrasing. Let's do phrasing first. I kind of want to start with the larger ideas and then narrow it down as we go. The phrasing is awkward at best on this track. Every single larger idea that we have in here, I believe, is an equal number of beats, which means that it can be subdivided equally into smaller parts. The beginning of the track is in 20 beats, which can be divided into 4 bars of 5. And 4 bars is a very standard amount of bars for a larger idea. 4, 8, 16, a lot of jazz is based on 32. We kind of work within those bounds. When you use an odd number of bars, that's when things start to feel awkward in your music. So we have that. The next section that I remember picking up on was 4/4. 4 bars of that, pretty straightforward. I got lost a little in the middle. Some of the time signatures and phrasings and sequence of time signatures gets wild, and there's a few sections that I noted were definitely not 4/4, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. There was one at the end where I never quite figured out the time signature either, but I counted out 28 beats, which is divisible by 4, which puts us in 7/4. 7 beats per bar, quarter note gets the beat. Again, we can break it down into a standard 4-bar phrase. But the phrasing is totally not that in any of these sections. It's what makes it so difficult to figure out what is going on. Because what if you just don't work with the idea that every 7 beats can be sort of self-contained, where you can feel a resetting of ideas on beat 8 or beat 1 of the next bar? That happens so frequently in here. In fact, at one point I was talking about that descending line where they had the home note, which was actually above the melodic element. But so they start from a note, descend down, return to that note, descend further down, go back to that note, descend even further down. And they have a varying amount of times that they would do this. Sometimes they would only go down 2 notes. Sometimes they would go down 3 notes. Sometimes they would go down 4 notes. And I couldn't really find a pattern to all of that that would fit within the realm of the 28 beats that I think was going on at the time. It always seemed kind of random how many notes we descended. I kind of started with the pattern. I was like, okay, so we start with 4, and then we go to 2, and then we go to 3, but even that pattern wasn't consistent, and I don't know what came after that. I would kind of get lost at times. So if for the 28 beat section, if they do 7 beats and then sort of reset, you can feel where 1 is on the next phrase, and it is also 7 beats. This is really easy to follow. But if we do a group of 4 and then a group of 3 and then a group of 6, then a group of 9, then a group of 2, you can see how it gets difficult to follow. The pattern becomes very complex, and that is what goes on a ton in this track. There are usually landmarks I could find where I'm like, okay, we have 3 more beats, and then we're going to do this large triple note idea to kind of give extra weight and emphasis to each of these notes. We're going to wrap that up with 2 back-to-back hits, and then we're on beat 1. We're starting the idea again. I can kind of feel where these punctuating phrases fit into the larger idea, but leading up to them, that was always tough. And so I had these moments of landmarks. Okay, this is what's going to happen next. This is what's going to happen next. But I didn't have landmarks for the whole larger passage. And a lot of that's due to the complexiality? Why can't I think of this word? Complexity of their counting, of their phrasing, of when they put the next accented beat. That's really what it all comes down to. What makes 4/4 so easy to groove to and understand is that you're either working with 4 on the floor, which is an accented beat, every beat's accented, just doom, 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 or you're accenting every other, maybe 1 and 3, maybe 2 and 4, so you have boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka, boom, ka. And that creates a groove, a pulse that's really easy to understand. But what happens if in 4/4 you accent beat 1 and then beat 4, but then you don't accent any on the second bar, and then you accent beat 2 on the third bar, and then maybe 3 and 4 on the fourth bar, and now it becomes difficult to follow the rhythmic pattern. And that's exactly what's going on in here, except they're also doing it with odd time signatures. And it's wild because on top of all that, we're going to move into musicianship a little bit, starting with the drums. The drummer is a polyrhythmic fiend. That dude is all over the place with the rhythms, and he's tossing in triplets here and there. He has what I think is different time signatures even in a couple of places. He doesn't use that too often, but there were some sections where I was like, okay, this feels like a 5 from everyone else, but he's drumming in 4? And so he's going to get 5 bars of 4 against everybody else's 4 bars of 5, which means the accent points are really not going to line up with the accent points that already aren't really lining up with the original 5. And yeah, the drummer he's a beast. He really is. Just absolutely mastery of time over there. But even, like I said, within the sections where he's not playing polymetrically and he's just playing polyrhythmically, there's still a ton of rhythmic ideas where the accent points are just in places that the rest of the band isn't following, and it creates even more chaos to trying to follow along with everything. The drummer also has a ton of a very wide repertoire, a large palette to paint with, so to speak. We have the cross sticking. I think there was different sets of drumsticks in there. I don't think we use standard drumsticks for every single section, but off the top of my head, I can't remember what sound stuck out to me, and I was like, wait, that's not a drumstick, but I can't remember what it was. We also have some, did I say cross sticking? We have hitting the stands of the drum kit. You know, like you put your snare on the stand, it's like a metal pole that goes to the grounds. Yeah, there's some hitting of that as well. It's probably not the snare one, probably like a cymbal one, since that's a bit more accessible. But yeah, the cymbals, so many different timbres out of the cymbals, hitting the bell, hitting the edge, hitting on the inside, light attacks that aren't going to create a lot of vibration on the cymbal. The dude just has so much precision and skill over his instrument. It is mind-blowing. Moving on with this, we also have the guitarists. Really interesting harmonic playing. We have some really strong cases of showcasing chord theory and a strong understanding of that, when to play what chords, how to influence the atmosphere, how to utilize dissonance in positive ways. Like I said, just a really strong grasp on chords in general. We also have a couple different styles in here. We had the blues guitar show up randomly out of nowhere. Again, utilizing all these different chords, the guitarists explore different voices, different ways of crafting melodies with different emotions to them. We have a little bit of, not really shred, but some faster playing, showcasing chops, dexterity, precision, stuff like that. But also these longer, held out notes, more fluid, tasteful solos that showcase really strong melodic narrative writing as well. The guitarists are just all over the place with that. Also, so many different textures, timbres to them. Light, plucky guitar work, a little bit of distortion on some of the guitars. Not a lot. We're not getting into the realms of like metal, but like a nice electric jazz guitar sound. Just a little bit of extra oomph to it. Actually, both guitars have their own signature tones to them as well. It's really easy to tell which guitarist is playing here. The vocalists. Really strong vocal delivery on the more powerful, full-bodied sections at the end, but we also saw a lighter airiness towards the beginning of the track. We had the belts from the second vocalist throughout the back quarter of this track. Just a lot of really great skill and breath control and all sorts of stuff coming. I'm not a vocal person. I could talk to you about guitars, basses, trumpets. I'm still trying to learn about voice technique. But I hear a lot of dexterity going on here, a lot of different styles of vocal work. And then everyone else. You know, we have the string section, we have the brass, we have the woodwinds. I don't really think that they had too much of a chance to show off technical chops. We didn't really hear any of them do anything that I would say sounded difficult, but I do want to bring this up anyways, is just instrumentation. We have all of these different instrument groups. At one point, I even mentioned, hey, we have every single family of instruments here. We have woodwinds, we have brass, we have drums, and we have strings. Not just guitars either, which do count as strings, but bowed strings. We had a cello and violin, I believe, in this track. We had trombone and trumpet at one point doing a duet. I don't know what the what the woodwind instrument was. It sounded very, well, woody, which makes me think more in the area of the clarinet family, oboe, bassoon, something like that. Not brassy like a saxophone, and not metallic like a flute. But it didn't sound reeded to me. Kind of felt more like a recorder, so I wonder if maybe this wasn't a Western instrument, and maybe it was something more traditional for folk Chinese music. I don't know. Everything else was very Western though. We had the trumpet, the trombone, the violin, and the cello. So I don't know. Maybe it was a clarinet. Hmm. I don't know. But yeah, I greatly enjoyed that though. Just having the full instrumentation on display, because I think it added so much to this track, particularly towards the end of the song when we began to have this massive rise and build up, and having all of these extra voices allowed the song to feel more whole, to feel more impactful. When we have slow burns in your average progressive rock song, right? It's usually a slow burn of ideas, multiple guitarists, the bass, maybe a couple vocal lines, backing tracking stuff, in order to create the layers with a few types of instruments. It typically is rather effective at what it does, but I do feel like it misses out on something very key and crucial that we hear here, which is the plethora of timbres. To kind of take this to art, you can certainly paint a picture with just one or two colors. Maybe even three colors. I don't know. There's usually three instruments in a band. We can stick with three. You can kind of play around with the colors. You can mix them a little bit if you want. I mean, we kind of have that with guitars having different tones. But you can still create a really effective picture even if you just use those three colors. It isn't necessarily that they're going to make your work better if you have more, but having more gives you options, tools in a toolbox. And I think instruments are the same way. You can make a really affecting slow burn and build up and peak to a song with just a handful of similar-ish instruments. But I think that in the right hands, with the right concept in mind, you can make something really fascinating and phenomenal with more sounds. And that's exactly what happens here. Could they have done all of this just with guitars? Yeah, it probably still would have sounded pretty cool. But the fact that they didn't, that we have the bowed timbre, that we have the brassy timbre, that we have the airiness of the woodwinds, all of this together with the plucking of the guitars and the wailing of the voices, it all captures something multifaceted that wouldn't necessarily come through without the plethora of sounds. And I think it works really well here. I mentioned that it sounds claustrophobic, that there's so many things vying for my attention, but it also feels very individual. It's not just a lot of guitars wanting my attention, it's a bunch of different instruments. In a way, I can feel like this is a group of people all shouting at me. And I think that makes the claustrophobic, anxious element of it stand out even more. What I find really interesting then is that we take this core motif and transfer it down to just the strings. I haven't quite figured out what that's supposed to represent, unless it's a type of clarity of having so many options and narrowing it down to one. There's a fork in the road with five paths. Where do you go? Well, option paralysis. What do I do? There's so many options coming at me, and you finally focus in, narrow it down. I'm taking this one. It's the strings, and so we walk down that path. I don't know if that's what they were intending. That's kind of what I got out of it. But I do think that utilizing all these voices at the end is a sort of very strong positive for this. Now there is one thing left that kind of worked as a negative for me. The song kind of peaks at like 8.5 or 9 minutes in, and it sits at that peak until about 10.5 minutes. That's when we begin to hear the decrescendo happen, some of the layers get pulled out. It's really where we start to find that we're reducing the tension here. But there's a solid minute and a half to 2 minutes of just sitting at that peak. It's exhausting. It's quite possible that that's what they wanted out of it, but I think that what ties into it isn't just sitting at this intensity for so long, it's also the repetition. We have this 28 beat phrase and we hear it over and over and over. Some slight variations. We did have the punctuating final like 8 beats done back to back a couple of times as an extended outro to the phrase before restarting it over. I actually kind of thought we were going to go towards an outro. It was going to wrap up this whole section and we were going to proceed from there, but nope, they just used it as an extension and started back over. Again, a sort of a false sense of security. Oh, we're finally done with this. We're moving on. Oh, no, we're not. We're still here. Nothing's changed. It was a red herring musically. And then when the song ends, the violins are playing that same ostinato, that same lick, that same riff that we've been listening to for 2 minutes. What felt, or what probably should have felt like relief, kind of still felt like annoyance. I was done with that idea, not just the heavy layering and cacophony of it, but the idea in general, and then being forced to listen to it even more without the cool drumming going along with it. It wasn't quite as reassuring or a release of tension, a resolution as I think it was meant to be, at least for me. I'm curious how other people interpreted those final moments of the track, but my idea was, really? More of this? Rather than, oh, nice relief, that we're finally out of the tension of it. But I mean, that's such a small thing, and it's quite possible that my whole experience with those final couple of minutes is entirely intentional as well. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it was a small point of discontent with the way that the song was written. I'm going to see if I can find some lyrics to this and if I can get a translation of it. Hopefully a real translation and not, like one that I do in Google Translate. But yeah, we'll do some lyrical analysis and then we'll wrap this video up. Alright, I found what seems to be a legit translation here. There's not a lot of lyrics. 10 lines, and a lot of it is very metaphorical. Now, I did find out that the track, I'm going to butcher this, but I'm going to try my best at it, Hebei Mokilin, which Hebei is a province in China where the story in this album takes place and where the band is based. So I guess it's a concept album. And Kelin is a mythical hooved chimera type creature in Chinese culture, said to appear with the imminent arrival or passing of a sage or illustrious ruler. So this is about a mythical creature that is appearing in this specific province. Now, the two main stanzas, our two verses at the beginning of the song, say, "Hear a roll of thunder, he closed his lips silently, stopped singing about twilight and yearning, he is mournful and dangerous at the moment." Hearing a roll of thunder, he began to feel chest tightness. Dark clouds stopped the moon flowing to the river bend. He got up and went to the wasteland on his own. And I think this is supposed to describe somebody who is going to become someone important. The first stanza talks about finding a path in life. It says that he stopped singing about yearning and while being mournful and dangerous decides to go somewhere. Decides to make a choice about things. And the second one says that he decides to go into the wasteland on his own. A decision that makes his chest feel tight. So again, we have somebody who is doing something that they don't necessarily want to do, but know that they need to do. That's sort of what I get between these two. The rest of the lyrics dance between two lines, bouncing back and forth between them. It says, try the cold and costly Qigong technique of gliding on clouds and water. Look at the electrocardiogram of the actor, the noble, the vagrant, and the bandit. I'm really glad that there's annotations on these. The Qigong technique is one that is used in Chinese martial arts, has been exaggerated in martial arts fiction as a way for martial artists to move faster than most humans and can glide on water and run up walls and stuff. Your Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon types of acrobatics. But it's the idea of being at one with the body to push its limits. And what this could possibly be talking about, it says, try the costly technique here of gliding on clouds and water, could just be about, a costly technique is one that would require a lot of dedication and time, which our character might be pushing themselves towards, making decisions and taking choices that isn't what they want to do but is best for them. It is taking a toll on them, but it is getting them access to new areas, allowing them to glide on clouds and water, to go places that most people can't. The second line, look at the electrocardiogram of the actor, noble, vagrant, and bandit, could just mean to look at what is in the heart of these types of people. I don't know where we should extrapolate that to, given that there is no other context for it, but it could just be something along the lines of, who would you want to be if you knew what was in the hearts of these types of people? I don't know. I feel like that's a really big extrapolation, though. And that's the whole song. I have no idea how to tie that back to this. Again, we have somebody who has options, and they take the one that is not the easiest, but the one that they feel they have to make. I kind of mentioned that at the end of the analysis about having multiple paths and ending up on one, just focusing in and ignoring the rest of it, and that I didn't really feel happy with the end of the song. And maybe that's what I was supposed to feel here. This person is making a choice to take a difficult path. It's one that weighs heavy on them. It makes their chest feel tight. They're mournful in the decision, but they do it anyways, knowing that it can take them to greatness, that it could make them somebody who is a sage or an illustrious ruler to who this mythical creature would appear for when they pass or arrive. I think I missed that. I think when I read that earlier, I said that it appears when a sage or ruler passes, but also when they arrive, and this could be about this person. They're going to be really important for history. They're making the tough decisions to do that, and thus this creature is appearing to showcase that this person has import or worth, and that it weighs heavy on them to make these decisions, but it's the right decision to make. And that's kind of what I got out of the end of the song too. It's a wild track though. It really is. There's so many twists and turns to it. And even that, I think, can have parallels drawn to this very vague and simple text that goes for the lyrics. There's a lot of ways we can draw thematic parallels here. And I think that's going to wrap it up. Those are my thoughts on this band and this song. I really don't want to butcher their names. But what are yours? Did you enjoy this? Was there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to what I said? Anything you'd like to correct me on? Or just give me your own thoughts, opinions, and perspectives about it. Put all that stuff down in the comment section. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate... Whoa! Did I just go on like a weird autopilot? That last one was for Linktree. You click that to find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that is the subscribe and stuff. Wow, that was weird. Anyways, we have another video today. It is our second one for Representation Week. I'll be back tomorrow. We're going to get back on schedule, usual schedule. We will have our third themed video and a special selection after that. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.